Hello.
Hello. How
Oh,
are you?
you hear me good.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Awesome.
Just as I was about to close the door, a child needed me, so that's why
Oh,
I couldn't log in at that
oh no, no
moment.
worries.
You already experienced what it's like making a podcast with me, so
Yeah, no, you're great.
thank
How's your day
you.
been so far?
It was very productive. I tried to record earlier this morning with several people, but two of us had the most interference and distractions and a lot of noise
Oh,
from people around us. So 40 minutes of recording down the tube. But then um, I said, you know what? Let me just take a break. I'll come back. And I fed the kids. And then next thing you know, everybody's happy on their little corners. And we went 20 minutes, finished the recording instead of being tortured for that 40 minutes. Next time, I think when that happens, I'll just be like, let's take a break. We'll come back and then go back to the podcast because it was really hard to juggle.
yeah.
And I was thinking, we can push through because I have that kind of mentality like, it's okay, it's okay. We can do this, we can do this. But then they were too needy and I couldn't. I had to stop everything.
Yeah. At least you got the last portion of it pretty well. It sounds like.
Yeah, that was good. And I'm back.
Welcome back. So, do you want to introduce yourself to everyone? Let us know what your podcast is about and stuff like that.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Ranela, and I actually have two podcasts. The first one, that's my personal one, is called anchor.fm/Ranela, Ranela and Friends. So, in that one, I just chat with people I meet on the internet or my actual friends in real life, and we just talk about things that's happening in their lives, what their projects are, and then there's also another part, which is podcast study group. So I was able to gather about 7 people to study Korean with on a regular basis. So every day we get a chance to talk to each other in Korean or read a script in Korean. And then the other channel, which I want to be more professional, is called Global Language Exchange. And that one, I want it to be mostly in Korean, but I'm not there yet. I can't speak Korean that well. So that's anchor.fm/Glex 2020, GLEX 2020.
I did not know that you wanted
And
it to be in Korean. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
oh, no, no, that's okay. I want it to be like Korean and English. So, or Korean and whatever language they speak, like global language, you
I
know?
see. Yeah, it makes
So,
sense.
yeah, I have a contact in Brazil and we communicate via translator for me and she speaks in Korean.
Mm,
Yeah. So she has a YouTube channel, Lala Yang, double LAYANG. I think that's her YouTube channel. And she teaches Korean in Brazil. So I think she's Brazilian Korean or Korean Brazilian. I'm not sure how to describe her, but she went to school in Korea and I'm like, please, will you join me on this new adventure? And she's like, sure. And we haven't yet because I can't communicate with her. Yeah, yeah. I'm not. My Korean is not that great. I don't know how this will work out. Actually,
so, how long have you been studying Korean?
I've been studying for 2 years almost.
Okay.
It'll be 2 years in October. So it's been quite a while, but for the most part, for the first part, all I did was listen, listen, listen,
Mm,
listen, listen. And then I started. I finally learned the alphabet after 9 months, and after that, I just amassed vocabulary, and now I'm learning to put the vocabulary together.
that's great. So, what would you say so far is the thing that you wish you had more help with, or something you struggled with, or something you haven't been able to understand? Like, what has been something that you feel is just a constant um, annoyance or hindrance?
It's actually my self confidence
Mm,
because I'm not at all self confident in speaking in Korean or in the knowledge that I know. So even though I have all this vocabulary, right? I probably know about 1,000 words or something. But once you ask me for that word, I'm like, I don't know. The answer is always in my mind, I don't know, but it's in there. I know it's in there because when I take quizzes, I get them right. So my biggest hurdle is speaking aloud with confidence. And so that's why I started the podcast. I
oh,
wanted to be able to speak aloud.
I,
I was petrified. Like I could not speak out loud.
okay. So I can see how confidence can be with the speaking out loud, but for the other thing that you mentioned, like not being able to recollect words even though you know them, um,
Mm,
let me ask you a question actually. When you do your quizzes, is the word in
mm-hmm.
Korean and you have to guess what it is in English, or is it the other way around?
Both.
Both. Interesting.
Mm, yeah.
Because you,
So I do
mhm,
just
go ahead.
fine. Yeah, I do just fine if it's like on paper or on the screen asking me, what is this word? Boom. What is that word? Boom. You put a person in between us, the word and me.
Oh,
Then it's like, I don't know. I don't know anything.
I see. So yeah, it seems like you haven't had enough like repetition of just speaking in front of random people, especially since it's a different
Correct.
language. Oh, I didn't ask. How many languages can you speak?
I think 4 or 5. I'm not sure.
Okay. And what brought you to Korean then?
Ah, so my son was like really ill for the first 2 years of his life, right?
Oh,
And I was just focused on that. I was just focused on getting him to the doctors, blah, 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 blah. Everything was about him just doing physical therapy, OT, all sorts of therapies. So it was like 4 days a week he was in therapy for something.
oh,
And doctor visits in those days also. So I basically had no life for 2 years. It was just his life that mattered,
yeah.
right? After the second year, when we got that clearance from the doctor that said, okay, he seems to be doing well, his brain is well, his liver is well, his heart is well. And then I went, I hit Netflix. I finally sat down to relax, I guess. And I'm like, I feel like reading subtitles today. So I just turned on a Korean drama, which I cannot remember what was my first drama. Might have been Strong Girl Bong Soon or something.
Um,
And Park Yoon Sik, I mean, hello. He just popped up at me on screen and I just searched all of his movies
uh,
and that's how it started.
I see. That's interesting.
Yeah. So finally, after 2 years, I was able to relax and like give myself time to just veg because it was such a stressful 2 years. Well, three, including his pregnancy too.
Mm,
So that's how I started with Korean. And after 3 months, I was like, why am I not learning this language? I'm hearing it over and over, but I'm not learning this language. So then that's when I picked up Go Billy.
yeah.
Go Billy's. So 90 minutes, learn Hangul. And then I was like, okay, after 90 minutes, I know nothing except except real, and Nian. That's it. Because that's my name. Oh, and
Oh, I see. That's
so
smart.
I spelled my name. That's it. I spelled my name and I was like, guys, I can spell my name. on Facebook and everything.
For no practice to be able to
And
just
then
get it like that, that's pretty good.
I didn't think so at that time. And my friend said, "Oh, if you want it to sound like your American name, Ranela, then you have to add a second um, real at the
Mm.
bottom of Nick." And I said, "Okay, we'll do it like that." I had no idea what it meant. And, 9 months after that moment, then I finally understood why she asked
Oh,
me to do that or told me to do that. So I feel very grateful that she named me, so to say. Like, that's she named me basically because she gave me the correct spelling of my name. And because I was playing with a bunch of combinations, like with the e
yeah.
combination and the e combination. So she said it's better to just use the all e combination. I said, okay, I'll do it like that. Because, I didn't know
Yeah.
anything. I just trusted. I said, okay, no problem. And aesthetically, it looks better than with an H in the middle. I don't
Yeah.
know. That's how I thought. And that's how it started. That's how it all started.
That's such an interesting start. It's so
How about you? Yeah. Tell me yours.
mine was way more random than yours. Mine was like I had a dream I was speaking Korean. I woke up, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna learn Korean. And that was
Right.
basically it. Um it's not something where like very, like your moment of relaxation, just enlightenment where you were like, after 2 years or 3 years of struggling, you're finally relaxing down to it. And it's the first thing that came. And it was like something you were able to attach to. It's nothing that grandiose or anything. But
Mm,
it definitely, like, regardless of the reason of why someone began to learn the language, it opens up um, so much. Like, just the way I see the world has drastically changed from when I started language learning to now. And I
mm,
even noticed that like the way I act depends on the language I'm speaking. So if I'm speaking in Korean, I'm
right.
probably acting a bit different than if I'm speaking in English, which just
Yes.
shows you,
So true.
goes to show you that even languages aren't just words. They're actually emotions, they're cultures, they're norms, they're civilizations, basically. And I thought that that was very cool. So that's why I'm learning languages. I'm sure you must have noticed. I mean, you said you know like 4 or 5 languages, so it's probably more obvious to you. But for me, it wasn't that obvious.
Actually, it wasn't because I grew up in the Philippines until I was 12 years old. So at home we spoke English, outside we spoke Bicol, and at school we spoke Tagalog. So already I had three
Oh,
languages. Um, and then when I moved to the US, we only spoke English at home or anyway, and Tagalog was spoken to friends I met at school. Like any Asian looking person, I was just like, "Hey, do you speak Tagalog?" And like, why are you even asking me? I was born
yeah,
here. And I didn't know people couldn't speak another language.
that's hilarious.
So so that went on for a few years until I finally got that. Most people only speak one language here.
Yeah, I'm 12. I speak three. You're like a grown up. You should speak like 10. That's not how it works.
So any Asian looking person, I was like asking them if they spoke,
Yeah.
my languages. And then in seventh grade, I took German, and I took German until college, and I graduated with a German major for language and literature.
Wow.
That's my other language. And then Spanish, I learned at work because when people came in and they didn't know how to speak, I memorized certain phrases that they needed to respond to. And
Oh.
then I memorized the possible responses. And that's how I speak Spanish. I don't speak it functionally. I can only speak it as an interviewer at the
I can only
hospital.
very specific words.
Like, yes, yes, I know the numbers, like receptively I know them.
Mm.
And but not exactly expressively. And so all of their responses I memorized, and like I wrote it down. okay, these are the possible responses to these questions. These are the symptoms that they could possibly say in Spanish. So that's how I know Spanish. Very, very, what do you call it? Like specific.
Yeah, very niche.
Yes. And yeah, I tried to learn Spanish like for fun, but I haven't fully grasped it yet.
Nice.
I might do like Spanish and Korean, like
Oh,
try words to Korean. But actually, I'm doing that for German right now because I'm like, I need to
brush
brush
up
up on my
German.
German.
Yeah,
So when you see my notes sometimes, like if I ever post them on Instagram, you'll see it's like half in German, half in Korean because I'm trying to recall the languages. Actually, somebody made a YouTube video saying like if you're learning or know more than one language, don't write your notes in your dominant language, as in English is my dominant language,
yeah,
right? So write it into your weak languages, two weak languages together, and that way it forces you to look at both languages simultaneously, and then like keep that in your brain.
yeah. That's not a bad idea. I actually thought of it from a different angle, where it's like, for me, I'm learning Japanese, so I should learn
Right.
Japanese through Korean, especially since they're so similar, and a lot of the times I understand a Japanese sentence because I know Korean, so that helps. But it can also strengthen my Korean. That's not a bad reason at all.
Mm-hmm. I think you it would really work out because I think the sentence structure is
Yeah, yeah, it's
similar,
almost
right?
the same.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of loan words between each
Yeah,
other.
that's what makes it easier. Like, I might not know anything they say, but then I'll just hear a couple words and be like, "Oh, I know exactly what the sentence is talking about because I heard three different nouns and I know what you're talking about."
Right. That's how I studied German because English and then German, they're both Germanic
Yeah,
languages. Even though most of English words are Romance, it doesn't matter. The sentence structure is very similar and there's a lot of cognates, so I was able to pick it up pretty easily.
that's awesome. So, what is your goal with the global language group that you're making? Because I really liked what you said about it. I think we both have kind of similar goals with what we're doing, but I think you're going at it from a completely different angle than I am, and I'll let you explain what you're doing with it.
So basically, I wanted to connect Korean learners with native speakers, but it can also be Korean learners with Korean learners as long as they can speak to each other in Korean. And, it has to be like a different level, a beginner with an advanced or an advanced with a native, that kind of thing,
Yeah,
or a beginner with a native. And it could be anyone from anywhere in the world. So, say for example, you're a Korean learner and there's a native speaker who have similar interests to you. What I wanted to do was to like pair the two up and have a conversation in Korean. Like, say, for example, like both of you are engineers. So you talk about engineering
mm,
in Korean. Because that's like when it's a common interest and when it's something that is emotional for both people, then there's a connection that's easily made
yeah,
as opposed to like complete strangers with nothing in common. You know what I mean? That's why I was able to approach you because I was like, "Ooh, I like what he's talking about on the podcast. I'm gonna send him a message like, hey, I'm the person on the internet, and
that's actually so smart. I think that, do you know of the app called Hello Talk?
yes,
Yes. So they do something very similar to what you're talking about, and we'll get into how you're different. But basically, they just have a whole platform of people that speak Korean and want to learn English, and then a whole platform of people that speak English and want to learn Korean. And they're like, "Here you go. Here's a platform that you guys can message and talk to each other and correct your sentences." But that's something that they should add, and I might actually send them an email for them to add something, some sort of feature where they actually just, you can sort by hobbies. So if my
Mm,
hobby is like I love talking about soccer, and you love talking about soccer, then we could have it as like a tag, and then we could filter through everyone who speaks Korean and also like soccer, and that's immediately a conversation starter. Um, that's such a
exactly.
smart
Exactly.
thing. I'm not trying to steal your ideas and import them somewhere else, but it's a great concept that you've thought of.
Don't worry about it. I don't mind my ideas being taken and like being spread all over the world. It's just like my contribution to humanity.
Yeah.
I'm so humble and everything.
And even if they did take it, that doesn't stop you from actually being able to do it. There's plenty. The world is plentiful.
Exactly. Yes. And my friend said something the other day. We're all selling the same thing. It's about our presentation.
Oh,
What? That blew my mind that moment. I was like, you are so right. We are selling the same things. Like, yes, yes, we are. And we just go about it in different ways. And it's okay. Like, there's plenty of room for everyone. I feel that way totally about everything that I do. Like, I share the things that I have generously. Like, I feel like, okay, if I can give it, I will give it. If I cannot give it, then I cannot give it. Before, I used to give from a place where I wanted like some sort of recognition for
mm,
it. But right now, I think in my 40th year, I have grown to actually like give freely. Like freely as in no strings attached. Yes, these are my ideas. Sure, you can use it. Go ahead, go for it. I hope you succeed. And I don't see it as oh my god, they stole my idea from me. I mean, granted, if I had like $1 million idea and I didn't um, work on it or didn't do anything with it, why should it stay with me when somebody who has the drive, who has the motivation, who has the means, who has the money can go ahead and share it with the world? Why not?
yeah.
I don't mind.
That's a realization that people don't get like their whole lives. So it's great that that's something that you realized. No, really, some people you'll see like you look at them and not to be rude or anything, but you're like you don't have that many years left to live, yet you're still saving all your money. It's like either way, it's going to go to your kids once you pass away. So like I'm not sure what you're doing, or even with their time. I mean, it's a bit of a mean example, but
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I understand. Like honestly, yeah, why are we hoarding things? Because I'm definitely a hoarder of things. That's for sure. So like I have collections of a lot of things. Transformer toys. It's not mine actually, but I won't let him get rid of it. I don't know. He's like, can you? He's telling me sell it, and I'm like, no, no, no. I'm not selling any of it. If you want to sell it, you sell it yourself. So we have like a hoard of Transformer toys. Um, and I sew, so I have a hoard of fabric, and I have like 5, 6, 7 sewing machines. I'm about to give one away, so be proud of me for that. I actually like repaired it because my kids used it as a piggy bank. They like dropped
Oh
coins and
wow.
buttons, all that stuff inside. So I took it apart and like shook it and make sure that nothing's inside. I test drove it, so now it's good. She can use it properly without like it exploding on her. Because I was afraid to give it away, like with the things inside it. I'm like, I could have just given it away and been like, okay, you take care of it. But I feel like if you give somebody a broken thing, then it's not a good karma,
I
Like I
see.
don't think about it. Unless they insist, and she didn't insist. So I'm like, okay, I'll repair it for
Yeah.
you. And so I repaired the sewing machine and it's ready for pickup.
That's good.
So yeah, whatever I have, I can give. That's what I keep telling myself. Whatever I have that I can give, I will give. I feel like, yeah, I think I'm having a midlife crisis. I'm 40 years old and I'm just like, I can't keep all of this stuff. I just got to give it
And
away.
you know what's interesting about that is that the more you give, the more you actually get. And it's like it gets easier to give the more you give, and the more you give, the more you have to
Yes.
give. It's a very
Yes.
strange concept for people to understand. It's like, wait, if I give something away, then that's going to mean that I have more. Like, how does that make any sense? But it's like you have to experience it. You have to like
Mm,
it does more than just like physically. You actually end up getting more. Like if you see someone who's like in need and you give them money, like somewhere along the way you're going to get money that you didn't expect. And this has happened to me
mm,
every single time in my life. There's not a single time that I made a donation over $100 that I have gotten it back from somewhere I have no idea, at least 10 times more. Like, no joke. Um,
Yes.
it's like whenever you're short on money, just like give a donation, and then just magical things will happen. And then not only that, it helps you disattach from things. It helps you
Mm-hmm.
like I gave away my favorite watch, and all of a sudden, like, I'm not so obsessed with watches anymore. Like, I used to hoard watches. I had like a huge collection of watches, and now I don't even know where they are. Um, and it's like I used to spend so much money on that, and now it's like, why was I spending money on it? So it not just like from that angle. It's also like I have never given something away without. I mean, I didn't do it because I was like, you know what, I'm going to give $100, and that means I'm going to get $200 back. Somehow, it wasn't
Right.
like that. It was just like that person needed help, and I was in the position to help. So I really like what you said
Right.
about that, and that brings us to what you're also doing with your language exchange, which is people giving to each other, people giving their time, giving having matching interests, and giving languages between each other. So
Yes.
that's definitely something that I like. I went a little bit different way about it. I actually haven't said this anywhere except with you, but
Mm.
soon I'm almost done with everything. Um, I'll be starting a kind of game show on Twitch, um, where we'll have like participants, and we'll have like a sign up sheet and everything, and people who are learning languages. So we're going to start with Korean learners, then English learners, and we'll move from there. But people who are learning Korean, and we'll have 3 different levels, so beginner, intermediate, advanced. You can sign up for whichever level you feel you're in, and we'll pair you up with 5 or 6 different people, and you're going to have a competition. And the goal of the competition is we're not going to correct any of your mistakes. We're not going to tell you something if you stutter, that's fine. It's not, hey, we're going to teach you something. It's actually more of like, hey, these are all the people that are in the same boat with you. All the struggles that you're having, they're having the same struggles. We're going to go through those struggles. We're going to laugh with each other about it. We're going to see how silly we look. We're going to try our best to actually like get the answers right. And some of them are actually made so difficult that you can't answer them. Um, and it's not because like we don't want you to answer them. It's because we want people. A lot of times with my students, like, oh, I was gonna say that, but I thought I would be wrong. It's like, well, who cares? If you didn't say it, then it doesn't matter whether you were right or wrong. You're still gonna be wrong. But if you said it, at least you had a chance of being right. And if you were wrong, you would have gotten that
Mm.
confidence, which is strange to say. It's like, oh, the more you make mistakes, the more comfortable you become with making mistakes, and that means you're gonna hit the bullseye more times. So that's another thing we want to do
Yeah.
with these things, and we want it to be fun. So um,
Oh, that sounds so awesome because you know what, behind the scenes of my podcast, that's exactly what
that
happens.
is, huh?
Because we're just laughing our butts off from like saying the wrong thing, from making mistakes. Like I don't even know if we're accidentally cursing, but we're like, okay, hold up. That doesn't sound right. Do it again, do it again. Take 24.
Yeah, I definitely cursed by accident multiple times when I was first learning. Like just things that in my mind, like they make sense, and I would say them. And they're like, "The heck are you talking about?" I'd be like, I'm talking about this year," and they're like, "That is not how you say this year. You're
Right.
calling me a little son of a," and I'm just like, "No, I'm not. I'm just talking about this year." And it's like, "No, you're not."
Exactly. I that's why I was so afraid to speak, right?
uh,
Because if I said the wrong thing, I'm going to offend somebody, and I was so afraid of doing that. But then I joined this one group called Katos by Daegun Chung. He is a aerospace engineer,
Ooh, interesting.
something like that. And I think he went to UMich. Um and he's now in Korea, and he created A to Z over there, which was an English meetup in person, and they speak in English. And then somebody said, like, I want to learn Korean, blah blah blah. So then he started Korean A to Z Katos, and by doing this, he has a Zoom, and a bunch of people get together and they do a PowerPoint presentation, introduce themselves,
Wow.
read out loud, and stuff like that. Oh my god, I thought I was gonna die. Like it was so intimidating. My anxiety level was like through the roof. I was shaking like behind the screen. turned off my camera like everybody else had their faces on screen. I turned off my camera. I was just like scared to death, and I'm like reading the things over and over and over. And then he comes up to me and he's like, "Ranela, she blah blah blah," and because I don't know what he said
Mm.
actually, I say blah blah blah. He probably said introduce yourself, and I was like, yeah, my name is Ranella, and I am 39 plus one. Not even saying 39 plus one. I said 39 and one because I had
Mm.
just turned 40 at the time. So I said, 서른아홉 하고 하나. Oh, I'll never forget that moment. But you know what you said when you said the more mistakes you make out loud, the more comfortable you get with making
Yes.
mistakes. So by now I've made more mistakes than I ever had in the past year and a half. So since May or April, since end of April, I've been making a lot of mistakes out loud. So now that's why I'm comfortable speaking with you, and that's why I was comfortable, not really comfortable, but like why I had the boldness to cold call and say, "Hey, by the way, I'm doing this podcast," because of that first experience. Like that was my first ever experience talking in Korean out loud.
It's amazing how once you do it and you start doing it, like all of a sudden, all those fears, like it just, you become like a different person after a while. Like, can you imagine yourself before then cold calling a bunch of people?
Right.
Yeah.
No, I cannot.
It's really amazing how, the other thing is like, you know how you were nervous and stressful, and I can only imagine like just being in that position with all these people. Like a lot of times we forget, we're so focused on ourselves and how nervous we feel. You know, a lot of people are just the same. They're just as nervous,
Yes.
and that's part of the reason why I think we both have our different initiatives, where it's like it's okay, we're all in this together, we're all nervous, don't worry about it, we're all stressing out, we all like, yeah, we're all crying on the inside, it's fine, we can just laugh about it.
Exactly. Yes. That's why when you mentioned the game show, I was like, I volunteer myself and my friends. Like right then and there, I volunteer our group.
Yeah,
And I told my friends about it, and they're like, oh, that sounds so cool. And yes, so Glex 2020 supports your initiative, whatever it
that's
is.
awesome. I don't even have a name. Well, I do have a name for it, but it hasn't been confirmed yet.
Yeah. When you're ready to tell us, whatever the name is, we support it.
Yeah, we already have a channel and everything. I just my I haven't finished some of the, like, we didn't think of like the naming because it's like the last, usually it's the first thing you do, but we're just like, we had the idea, we're like, we'll
Yes.
just finish the idea and then we can worry about the naming later, and it's like, yeah, what are we going to call it? Oh, we'll worry about that when it comes, and now it's like really close and it's like, oh, we still don't have a name.
Yeah, like me, I launched without having anything. So we're just like crickets over here. I have one interview that I need to put together because we recorded our segment separately, and I don't have a computer where I can record
Mm,
everything like together. Like we discussed it, but we had a script, we each recorded our part separately. So now I got to put it together, and the anxiety is high for that too because I don't want to do injustice to him. You know, this is the person who helped me learn the alphabet. Like he had made a video about BTS and phonics. So he like broke down the BTS song in phonetics,
oh,
in Hangul. So I was like, wow, how is that the S on the bottom sounds like a t sound? And that's how I figured out like bachim sounds are different, blah blah blah. And then he made a phonics video, just the Hangul, and he posted it, and that's when it finally clicked in my mind. Ah, these are the letters and these are their sounds. And I'm so thankful for that. I guess it's an emotional attachment, you
mm,
know. The YouTube channel is called Learn. It's LKIK.
okay, okay.
Learn Korean in K
Oh, I
culture.
was close.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. He also has a second channel called Gumun Pop, and that's where he teaches English to Korean speakers. Yes, that's right. So When I want to hear Korean, I just go to that particular channel and then I hear him teaching English but in Korean. So then I pick up some of the words in Korean for the English counterpart, like grammatical counterpart.
Um,
So it's kind of like a reverse thing.
yeah,
So that helps me too.
especially if you know like what he's talking about in the topic, it just makes it so easy. Like even if
Mm,
you only understand two words out of the sentence, like you get it. You know, that's
mm.
kind of how it is with me in
Yeah.
Japanese. Like I don't actually understand every single word they say, but I understand 90% of what they're saying. Except for like the
Yeah.
historical part, or like when they start talking about like magic and stuff like that. Then I don't
Mm.
understand most of it. But like when they're just talking amongst each other, between like body language and the 2 to 3 words that I understand, and then sometimes I get lucky and they say a word in Korean, and I'm like, whew, you know, and this is like, this is too much. This is too easy. Uh,
Yeah, then your confidence
yeah,
gets really,
yeah.
really high at
As soon
first.
as I hear a word that's the same, like chidi, which is like geography, I just knew exactly what they were talking about. I was like, oh, they're listing all these different like category like oh history and science and geography. Like this person's a genius, and I was like, I got that from just one word and body language, and I was like, that's awesome.
Because, because language is not just
It is,
words, like you were
yeah,
saying. It is everything. It's all encompassing. That's why I am so grateful for whoever mentioned that we should practice with our voice. That must have been Katos. He's like, you cannot be a beginner your whole Korean learning
yeah,
experience. Like, you need to get to the intermediate level, and the only way you can do that is if you put yourself out there and start talking. I'm like, that's crazy talk. And then finally, when I joined, he's right. He's right. He's been right all along
yeah,
that you need to put yourself out there. And your game show will definitely propel people who are learning. And if they're like at a lower level, just the adrenaline rush from like trying to work a problem out
yeah.
in a different language will make them will make us. I'm
Mhm.
gonna put myself in there. Will make us get better because it's like mind, body, soul involved with language learning. Everything's
It's
involved.
actually interesting to like thinking about it for me personally. Like the intermediate plateau was very difficult. I didn't have much of a beginner
Mm,
plateau, but when I look at most people, they
mm,
actually have a beginner plateau, and
yes.
it's not because it's hard. Like when you're at a beginner plateau, the percentage when you're a beginner, the percentage you learn every time is really big. So if you only know 5 words and you learn 5 new words, well, that's 100% increase, you know? Whereas when you're intermediate, it's
Uh-huh.
like very small increases, percentage wise at least. The thing about
Yes.
beginner plateauing is that it's more of an issue of like you don't know so much that you feel very unconfident saying anything. That just because you
Mm,
don't know like how to say sentence A, you might know how to say sentence B, but that's not what you want to say, and so it decreases your confidence. So you don't say either sentence. So now you think that you don't know either sentence, and it's like
correct.
putting yourself down, and it's more of a psychological plateau, and that's why I think it's actually harder than hey, there's all this information that I'm learning and I don't feel like I'm improving, and it's like really easy for me to break through it where I just had a spreadsheet and I was like, this week I learned this, I can say this now, this week I learned that, I can say that now, and I actually tracked it, and whenever I'd feel like I feel like I'm not improving, I'd look back to that document and be like, oh my God, I learned so much in the past month. I can't believe I felt like I'm worse than I was last month. Um,
Ooh, that's nice. Teach me that how to do that spreadsheet.
yeah, the way I had it was I would, if I learned any words or if I learned a certain topic. So while I was commuting to school, I would listen to, what are they called? Talk to Me in Korean. And then I'd also
Mm,
go over some how to study Korean lessons. And what I
mm,
would do is I would like write down today I learned the grammar of like eso, which means like at. So like I work at home, something like that. And then I
mm,
would have just like a spreadsheet, and I would write like August. What's today? August 28th, 2020. I learned
mm,
eso, and then the the next few days I try to use it. So like
Mm.
one thing I would do is I would use Hello Talk, and I would have like a language exchange partner, and I would tell them, hey, I want a bunch of like, this is what I learned. This is how I understand it. Is this right? And can you give me some examples from yourself? And what they would do is they would actually explain it in Korean. But because I have that experience and I know exactly what the topic is, I may have not understood 80% of the words, but I understood everything he said. And it's strange to say it that way, but it's like I knew what the topic was about. I knew what he was trying to explain, and I could just kind of understand it. And he obviously they would dumb down the stuff to my level because I wasn't like very fluent at that time. So that's one thing they would do. And here sometimes they would be like, oh, you understand it this way, but it's actually used in this other situation, like a little bit like this. And so I would go back. I didn't take any notes, which I kind of regret now, only because I started teaching. And I'll be like, I wish I took that one note. I can't remember it. So now what I do is like anytime I learn something new, I'll like write a sentence with it. Like if it's a word that's like I think is really cool, I'll write a sentence. If it's a grammatical form that can be used in a way that I didn't know, I might write a sentence using it that way. Or I might just say like, oh, this can be used to mean like 때문에, and that's it. So I just have like a whole document of just like random notes. But I would just populate that spreadsheet with more and more things that I learned, even if they're like small. Even if it's like, oh, today I learned the word for ice americano, and like I didn't know what it was at first, and it's like shortened in Korean as iced americano. So like and I write that down. And then like whenever I'd feel like, oh, I haven't done any progress or I haven't moved on, I would see like this spreadsheet of like 200 different entries. That's just like things I've learned. And I'd like convince myself, how is it that I'm not learning anything if I know all this? And then I'd go back to like entry 15 or entry 1 or something. And I say, eso, I can make a sentence with eso. I can say like I ate at home. I can do that. So why do I feel like I haven't learned anything? And that would kind of give me the motivation to keep going. So that's how I did it. I know each person has their own different way of doing things, but I would just like look back at it and just to mentally convince myself. The better way to do it is to have someone do it for you. And what I mean by that, I do this for almost every single one of my students. At some point, I will take a recording of them just speaking or doing something or trying to solve a problem or something. And then once they feel that they're not improving or that they're going nowhere fast, things like that, or they plateaued, I will play that video to them or that recording to them. And I'd say, remember when you were there? And then I'd say, look at you now. You would make fun of someone who was in your position, like, oh, how do you not understand this? It's so simple. It's like second nature. And they'd be like, yeah, you're right. I guess I did improve. And then that would kind of like lift up their spirits. But obviously I can't do that to
I
myself. So
yeah. I do have proof then for myself. My first episode to the 26th episode, which is actually my mom, but the 25th episode is not my mom. So like in my podcast, I do have proof that I improved even just this month. And also I have 5 notebooks filled with notes. But to me, I feel like that's not enough. Like I feel like, well, if everything's in the notebook, you don't know it in your head.
yeah, that's part of the reason why I didn't
So,
take notes. It wasn't that I was lazy or anything. It's like I don't want to have books filled with just like notes. I want to take something very small. Like if I'm going through a lesson and I take a whole page of notes, I think I've failed. The reason why I think I've failed is because I'm not going to be able to remember that entire page. But what I will be able to is remember one sentence or one line. And I'm going to take that one line and I'm going to become so good at it that I will never forget it for the rest of my life. Then I can move on to the next line. It's slower than writing, like taking a whole page of notes. It'll take me like a month to get a whole page of notes versus like 10 minutes. But at the very least, that one page of notes is not in my notebook, it's in my heart. And I can do,
I do
yeah,
I do have the notes, but I also repeat the videos over and over.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll run through it once and take as many things down as I can, then run through it again and fill in the blanks, and then run through it again, fill in more blanks.
Unfortunately, the audio cut out. my phone overheated, and that caused the recording to end here. But we had a very good discussion, and I hope you guys enjoyed it.